What's going on, puckheads? We welcome you back into another late night edition of Pens and Pucks. We hope all of you have managed to walk yourself down off the ledge like we did, and you've reached out to your local suicide hotlines if you've got bad thoughts in your head.
1-800.
How you doing tonight, Nick?
I'm good. We're like back in the day, Sportsline, Jim Tanty and Mark Hepsher doing the 11:30 show. We're prime time.
Oh, classic, bro.
Yeah.
How you feeling today after waking up and the air smells a little bit more stale, and the birds, instead of listening to their chirps, you're wishing you could shoot them with a BB gun?
Yeah, it was. You wake up. It was a sunny morning here, and you're like, oh well, we're out of the playoffs again, and you start. I analyzed the game last night all day. Just listening to Pittsburgh sports media all day, reading different articles, and it was another rude awakening of what was a short Penguin playoff season.
Before we get into all these different topics we're going to talk about today, what did you feel like the general feeling was around the NHL and in the media outside of Pittsburgh about how we flop like a pair of sandals on the beach?
Well, a number of sports stations here in TO, I think they enjoyed it. There's a lot of Sidney Crosby haters out there, and like I've been saying, throughout the playoffs and towards the end of the season, a lot of sports media think the Penguins are an arrogant and cocky franchise, and they love to see the Penguins go down early. And I got a bunch of, texts and emails over the last 24 hours, just chirping and enjoying that the Penguins are out and, number one seed. What really burns me tonight is just watching these hockey games and looking at, the Saturday night 8:00 game is the Islanders in Boston. When you see that visually on the screen, you're like, it really hits home. It's almost unrealistic that we're out already. And, we can't even stay in the playoffs the last 3 years for 2 weeks.
What do you think of that Islanders Bruins series? So where do you see that going?
I don't know. It's it's going to come down to goaltending, and like I've said all along with the Bruins, Tuukka Rask to me is the difference maker. I think the Bruins will be well rested. They took care of the Caps in 5. I think Boston should win that series. Again, I don't think the Islanders are a good team. They're just a well-coached team, and they had Sorokin that played really well. Nick says Bruins in 6. Welcome back, Nick. I think it's not going to be a long series. I think it's what's going to be interesting is if the Bruins get to Sorokin and then Varlamov has to get in net there, and we'll see what happens.
Yep. Well, we'll see how it goes.
Mm-hmm.
I know I could tell even the pain in your voice about having to talk about that series.
That's
clearly evident.
I did pick the Bruins to come out of the East. Unfortunately, I did have that, but I didn't have them playing the Islanders to get out of it. So
yeah. What a kick in the nuts if it's going to be the Bruins and the Leafs too. Oh my God, go Jets! Jets, Jets.
Yeah.
All right, so let's hop into it. Obviously, Josh Yohe, Rob Rossi, Mark Madden, all the media pundits in Pittsburgh either were on shows today or had articles dropping from late night to where we are right now. And we're going to go through a bunch of things here. We're going to go again, the goaltending, the core, the coaching situation, and potential trade candidates, everything that we're hearing right now. Let's start off with the goaltending situation. What's the latest you're hearing or gathering right now on that massive sieve? Tristan Jarry, what are you hearing right now in terms of what is expected for the goaltending situation moving forward right now in Pittsburgh?
Well, all the talk today was that Jarry will not or should not be back wearing a Penguins jersey. I saw that. That's awesome. Wearing a Penguins jersey next year. I think, the room definitely has lost faith in Jari, even though they might not come out and say it publicly. But in terms of, there was rumors before, the last few games here that some players inside the room thought that Jari was taking this too easy going. So, Madden believes that, Jari should not wear a Penguins uniform, even as a backup. He's making 3.5. That's really too much for a backup. So there was talk somewhat of, Seattle taking a player, so they would take Jari off our hands as well. So that was put out there. Jari going to Seattle. It is interesting. Again, young goalie. Maybe they figure, maybe they're not a playoff team, so he can, play well in the regular season and see what happens. Maybe he's gonna groom into a goalie that, might be a starting goalie. Then you also have the talk of Mike Buckley, the goaltending coach. Everybody wants that guy right out of town, right? So it's
this is now 2 goalies under his watch that have nosedive, basically.
Right. Yeah. So all 3 guys, like even they had Madden had Yoey on. DK in his article definitely, he's been calling out Jari the last few games here. He's basically said, and he's not really a harsh guy in his articles, but he just said the goaltending was garbage. You had Tim Bent on as well on Madden, and again, everybody sort of just said Jari, he most likely he will not be back in a Penguins uniform. So
was there any talk from what you gathered about signing or trading for a replacement?
There was talk about trading for a replacement for sure. There was talk about Gibson in Anaheim, and for Penguin fans out there watching and viewing it maybe tonight or tomorrow, I know that this is gonna hurt your heart a little bit, but the name of Jake Getzel is we'll get to that. We'll get to that. Yeah. But there's definitely been talk of trading for a goaltender, as well as looking at the UFA goaltending that is available for next season. And we'll get into that because there's a few names that could be a possibility.
Any rumblings about Marc-Andre Fleury?
No.
Okay.
Yeah. So I think they were going to bring in, I would say this to the Penguin fans, they are looking to bring in a veteran goaltender for sure. That is, I would say that's 1,000% guaranteed.
Not going to go with one of the young ones, right? No. So the talk, and obviously a lot of the focus, because after that series ended last night, was, a lot of people were putting it out there like this was the end of the core of Letang, Malkin, and Crosby. You saw a lot of like Instagram posts and Twitter posts, kind of almost like, I don't want to say farewell, but like to that extent of like, it's been a good run. What are you hearing about where the core is in terms of, are they splitting it up because of contractual situations? Are they going to be stuck together because of what Sid wants? Are they going to be stuck together? What are you hearing about the core of Letang, Malkin, and Sidney Crosby right now?
So basically, with the articles and what I've heard today is, it looks like if I was a betting man going to Vegas, I'd say all 3 are back. In Yoey's opinion, all 3 are back. And there's a few reasons why here. And again, you lose the series last night. You want everything to be blown up. You want, overhaul the roster, drive guys to the airport. We always talk like that. And we feel like that after a loss like last night. But if you really look at the overall picture here, there's a few things that come into play. Number one is that 71, Malkin and Letang, their contract they have 1 year left on their contract. With both those players right now, Gino, I don't think has much trade value right now. He's got the bum knee. He played well the last couple of games, but
he's also got a no trade club, full no trade clause.
Full no, right? Yeah, exactly. So he's determining where he's going to go, and that's sort of put the handcuffs on Hexy to make a real hockey trade per se. Maybe it's if it's a destination that Gino wants to go and they entertain that could be a possibility. But I really don't see Gino going anywhere. Where I see this going is he plays out his last year. If he has a decent year, maybe they sign him to a short-term extension.
Let me ask you this.
Yeah.
Sorry to cut you off. Do you think they could entice him with Florida because that's where his wife's at?
Yeah, and that was discussed in on Madden and also too a couple articles I read today, because they do spend some time in the Florida area that might but again, it's all because of salary cap and during this pandemic, a lot of teams are cash strapped. They've lost money. Is somebody willing to take on a $9.5 million contract? That's a big problem. Like, you probably won't have a team that's going to take a guy that's going to be 35, 36. I think he's going to be 35. Yeah, 35. Sort of a bum knee, injuries. He hasn't been in the best, fit. His fitness level hasn't been the best. So, are you going to take a chance? Probably not.
But do you think a team like Florida, because of how close they came this year, they could see him being his experience in the playoffs and his overall ability when he does get his game going, that he could be another piece that helps him get over that hump of the first round and deeper into the playoffs? Or is the price tag too hefty?
I think the price tag is too hefty. But that being said, like they said today on the Madden show, is there a team willing to, maybe we have to eat a couple million of that contract to unload, maybe 7 million of that contract, and maybe get a couple players at 3.5 each to get the roster better and heavier, let's say. In regards to Letang, everybody said that this guy had he did. So let's talk about Letang, because I was thinking about him all day, and I know that, I know you're gonna go there, but picture this. He played when Hexy and Berkey came. He played the best hockey he's played in a long time. Mm-hmm. I really think, and we're going to get to this, but I really think the issue with the Penguins is one person and one person only. They have a good hockey team. Okay. This was probably one of their deepest teams they've had in recent years, but they played the same system. And the same system is the killer. It is the killer. Now, if you have somebody that holds Letang responsible and says, listen, this is not the way we're going to play here. So it's either my way or you're not going to be playing these minutes that you used to. And when you look at what happened here in the Islanders series, this is a result of, and we'll get into that, the coaching. But when you're looking at the core, so 71, I don't think is going anywhere. What's been said today is, again, with Chris, he is in great shape. He's a fitness fanatic. His legs will last at least 4 or 5, 6 more years here in the NHL. The problem is, Jordan, as much as we don't like some of the things he does, it comes back to who will, if you get rid of him and if you don't get a number one defenseman back, who is going to eat the minutes? Who is going to eat those minutes? Right. So, even last year, like, everybody was talking about Marino being the second coming and he's going to take over Letang. Sophomore year, see that happen. Yeah, sophomore slump, right? Let's give him next year to really judge what's happening here. And even with a better defensive partner, listen, he's looking over and he's saying, fuck, look whom I'm playing with, the giraffe. This guy's like, a reindeer on ice. So, there's a few things with Marino, but that being said, there was an article today with Rob Rossi, and I told you about this offline here, is he's suggesting there's 2 guys that are going to mold this team or the direction it goes. It's either going to be one way or not. So he's saying it's Mario Lemieux, and Sidney Crosby have to have a discussion here on who is the core going to stay or is the core going to go? Now, I said to you, Jordan, if Lemieux goes to Sidney and he says, Sid, for us to go further here, do you trade Letang and Malkin? And you know, Sid, what's he's going to say? He's going to say, no way. Right.
Yeah.
So my opinion with what everybody said today, Jordan, I cannot see Letang or Malkin being shopped. Now it could happen, but everybody's saying that most likely from DK to Madden to Tim Benz and Josh Yohe, the core is coming back.
How do you feel about that?
Well, when we get into the next topic, I'll discuss that more. But how do I feel about that? When you really analyze exactly what went down here and what they're saying, unless you can find a hockey trade for Chris Letang, right? I'm not trading him.
What would you take for Malkin? Would a third rounder be enough for you?
Yeah, I think, you know what, I would take a third rounder, but the Penguins have to have something in their back pocket that they're going to use that money with. Like, so for me, if they're going to trade Malkin, then there's a player that's a UFA, is Gabriel Landeskog. That's the guy that I'm targeting. But are the Avs going to let the captain go? Probably not. So you have to have a backup plan here, because all of a sudden you trade Malkin and you get a third rounder.
JFC, baby.
Sorry? Yeah, exactly. So again, with his quotes yesterday that we read, it sounded like he was leaving town. Today, it sounded more like from these guys in the media that he will be here next year. And they even talked about if Malkin were to get traded, it would be Sidney, Jeff Carter, and then so on, right? So for me, if you're getting rid of Malkin, Jordan, you need to have something that is granular, meaning you have to have somebody in your back pocket, because Jeff Carter, like a good point was made today as well, is Jeff Carter, that was a sample size. He was geared up. He was fired up. Playoff run, 16 games, 21 games, 32 games, whatever they're going to play in the playoffs. Yeah, exactly. I used to do that all the time, the clear tape, right? on your teammates. They never knew it. They go in practice, bang, fall over. Yes, you got it. Yeah. No, in terms of Carter playing a full, let's say, 82 game season, Jordan, as a second line center at 36 years old, you're asking a lot, right? So
Jack Eichel, baby, here we come. Let's go, Jack, baby. You want to come? You can come play with Sid. Let's go, Jack.
Yeah, but that
and we got a relationship with the front office there. What do you want?
I would say this is that I would even stay away from Eichel, to be honest with you. I wouldn't even touch that. I'll be honest with you, I wouldn't touch it. This team doesn't need that. They need balls the size of church bells. That's what they need. And right now they don't have that. And they don't have that, man.
Man, if they were trading one of their top two defensemen too, I'd be first in line, bro.
I want to see this team change its character. And you can do that, and we're going to talk about it, tonight, somewhat. But so if I was a betting man, I think the core's back. And I do see this with Gino.
So you're telling me you wouldn't trade for, if one of them was available, Dallin or Ristolainen? You wouldn't trade for one of those guys?
Ristolainen I would trade for, not Dahlin.
Okay.
Because Dahlin is great offensively. And remember, when he got drafted, this guy was supposed to be like Norris material. Like, he was supposed to be, and he's had up and down seasons. Now Buffalo's been shit, but and they've been going through coaches like anything here. But to me, he still hasn't maxed out. I think Pittsburgh they need that guy that's gonna beat down a guy in front of the net. Like this guy Mayfield on the Islanders, he beat down Sid, cross checks to the ribs. Like, I think it was last night. Like, he cross-checked Sid so hard in the back there. I thought for sure he broke a rib. Like, Sid was just
Letang, and Mike Sullivan for Ristolainen.
that I might do for sure, right?
No, but I know what you're saying. Yeah. You want more grit. You want more sandpaper added to this team, not just in the top four lines, but also on the blue line. Clearly, that's needed, right?
Exactly, because we're that blue line is still built. They're all the same, except for like I said, CC, where he threw his weight around, which I didn't think he would this year. But you have Matheson and he got ripped a little bit today too as well. Pettersson definitely got ripped. Marino, nobody, Dumo did his thing. So Dumo, he played hard. But more sandpaper for sure on the back end and up front too. And you look at the core, and this is where it gets really interesting, because if you can make the right moves, right? If you make the right moves, you can definitely still have a season next year that I believe the window's closed in terms of Gino. Kevin King here.
He says, as an Isles fan who enjoys listening to you guys, I found this during the series and like to learn about Penguins. Mayfield had the best series he's had as an Islander. He's a liability usually.
Yeah, but you see that, Kevin, that Trotzy showed him the game plan to play against the Penguins, and he looked like he was their best defenseman. So Trotzy's a great coach, for sure.
On Nick's hockey podcast this morning, which you can find, it's called The Hockey Lounge, the guy talking about how the Leafs fans aren't going to lose to the Habs because the Leafs are just way more talented. He sounded like us Pens fans with the Isles. Rule number one as a hockey fan, do not listen to what Leaf fans have to say. They're usually delusional, okay? These guys make a signing in the offseason, and they start the parade in August for the upcoming season. If you one of the most delusional fan bases in all of sports, let alone hockey. Little story time here. Me and Nick, when we go down to Pittsburgh, you do not know the amount of times, we've talked to fans and they can tell we're not from there, and they say, "Oh, where are you guys from?" And we say Toronto. And the first thing that comes out of their mouth is, "We hate Leaf fans. They come down on buses all drunk and belligerent, and they come into our arena and they just start chirping and chirping and chirping." And, even when we ran into Michael Landsberg walking down, he was taken aback that we were Penguins fans from Toronto, because if it was almost blasphemy that we weren't cheering for the Maple Leafs. So,
yeah, even Elliot Friedman, when we ran into him in the elevator there before the game, he was pretty shocked that we were Penguin fans coming from TO and hardcore, and we knew more than I think he did about the team going into the game. But
that's how we got the good story about him, about his friend in the Devils.
Yeah,
remember his friend, the Devils fan, who lost his job over going to see them in the Stanley Cup. Yeah. So. But
Leaf fans, they were texting me. All my buddies, the TO Leaf fans, whatever. But the thing that I say is that, listen, you haven't won a cup since '67, and you haven't won a round since 2004. So you shouldn't be talking about anything,
And that was back in 2004. If some of you are too young to remember, that's when the cap was non-existent, basically, and they were trying to buy Stanley Cups. They were trading for guys like Brian Leach. They were trading for whatever they could get, and that's what was so sweet about when they went out against when Roenick made the call when they went out against the Flyers there. Remember, that was on a Brian Leach.
Yeah, he went upstairs,
right? Yeah,
bar down, Jeremy Roenick.
Yeah, but remember, Leach over pinched, and then it was just came back the other way, and it was a wrap. But they attempted to be the Yankees of the NHL, and they failed so miserably. It was beautiful to watch.
Yeah.
Anyways, that's why we get a kick out of, hey, Le Habitant. Let's just say that. Eh?
Yeah. 2-0 in overtime, but so the core, I think, will be back from all the outlets today. So for sure. Yeah. You went to a Pens game in TO 3 years ago, got heckled by hammered Leaf fans. I was 13.
Let me tell you something, Nicholas. I went to a Pens game in TO about 5-6 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And it was with my wife now. We were dating at the time. I think I've told you the story. And we walked in, and I'm just decked out in full Penguin stuff, right?
Yeah.
And they're giving out beanies, like Leaf beanies.
Yeah.
And they go to give me, and I literally looked at the guy. I go, what the fuck do I want with that? and I said, look at me, bro. He goes, oh, you can take it home. You can give it to a friend. I said, bro, none of my friends need toilet paper, and neither do I, bro. Keep that. Hey?
Yeah.
And I will never forget one of the sweetest, and I wish we could go back. 2009.
Yeah.
All right. Valentine's Day, bro. Nick brings the wife. I bring my girlfriend of a long time as well. We go down there. Yeah. And we got up really big early, right? We got up like 3-0, right? We ended up losing 5-3, I think.
Yeah. And
I will never forget this. Me and Nick are standing up. I will never forget this as long as I live. We're standing up because remember the guys behind us were real silent when we were giving them the work, eh?
Yeah.
And then they came back and these guys started chirping us behind us, right?
Mm-hmm.
So me and Nick stand up with the girls and we're like, yo, get out of here, right? Because there's only a couple minutes left. We wanted to beat the traffic, right? We're like, we're not winning this, it's over. Because that was Tyrion hadn't been fired yet, right?
Plus the heckling was getting out of hand.
Yeah. So we get up and I'll never forget this, Nick. One of the two jabronis behind us, you know what he said? You might remember this. Says to his buddy, they won't even make the playoffs this year.
Yeah, I remember that.
Remember that?
Yeah.
And because we were like just fighting for 8th place at that point, right?
Yeah.
And that was when we didn't have this division 1 versus 4 bull crap.
Yeah.
And we're getting up. And I'll never forget that when we were sitting on your couch, because we went to game 3 that year too, like we did in 08. But when we were sitting on your couch when we clinched and we popped out the champagne, one of the first things I said to you was, I wish we could go to that arena right now with those two jabronis behind us that were talking all that shit and say, not going to make the playoffs, huh? All right.
Yeah.
A lot of talk for a team that hasn't won a cup since there was more than 6 teams in the NHL, bro.
Exactly. For sure.
100%. My God. Anyways, that's my Leaf rant for the night.
So yeah, if I was a betting man, the core will be back.
Yeah. I don't know, I get what you're saying. You really think Letang has no value after the year he had?
Again, I think if it's a fantastic hockey trade and he agrees to the team that because he has an 18-team trade, limited, right? So if he agrees to it, if there's something that really wows Berkey and Hexy, then maybe that's going to happen. But for me, is again, and we're going to get into this, is who's gonna play those minutes, right? Unless you're getting a D that can play those minutes, if it's a hockey trade 1-for-1, and you get a guy that's going to play those minutes. Who's going to step up and play those minutes? Yeah, you say POJ. I definitely think POJ.
I'm joking.
No.
Joking.
Yeah, no. I know you're joking, but I definitely think POJ.
I'm serious as when I say Friedman too. You know what I mean?
Yeah. What happened to him? POJ. So POJ definitely will be in the lineup next year because we'll get to why he'll be in the lineup. But the core will be back. I would think, unless there's a wow hockey trade out there.
And just. Final thought on this core thing. Are you okay with that?
I'm okay with it if something happens. And that is a coaching change.
And what do you call one of those little 2-wheelers with the handles that you ride around on? Segway. So the coaching situation.
Yeah.
Mike Sullivan. I want you to start this little topic segment off. About that interesting quote from the post game.
Okay, so one of the last questions Sully was asked is, did he think what was the reason why we lost or the Penguins lost the series? And he came out and said, we didn't lose because we're not a big team.
And why is that so important, Nick? Tell the people.
So for me, the biggest thing I got from that is he's sort of sending a message to the management, to Berkey and Hexie, saying, we lost for one reason only, not my style of play, not my system. We lost because the goaltending was garbage, which if I'm a Penguins fan, I'm worried about that, because he still believes his system that worked in 2017, 2016 can still work now. And we've seen it 4 years in a row, 3 years in a row. We've been knocked out the first round. 2 years in 3 years, we've lost to a team that, I think the Islanders were a higher seed than us in 2019. But last year against Montreal and this year against the Islanders, we're the higher seed. So we've lost 2 out of the 3 years against a lower seed. And I think that's a scary thing for Penguin fans, because if he does come back, he's going to play the same way. And for me, when you're looking at, now we can talk about the core with the coaching situation. If you get a guy that holds these guys accountable for playing, not pinching, because if you look at this, Jordan, and again, you know me, I start thinking about plays and what happened in these games. If you look at what happened, especially in a few of these games with, at home in game 5, I think it was, when Letang made that bad pinch and Jake had to play defense, right? That system puts players vulnerable to play that system. So if you have a system that the D are not pitching, Jake's never in that position for that to happen. So Sully's putting players in positions
just like on the Beauvillier goal too, right?
Right.
That first Beauvillier goal
was
what
I'm talking about.
Letang pinched 2, and Crosby blew it, right? The defensive assignment in game 6.
Right.
So that's 2 instances in just game 5 and 6 alone. But anyways, continue.
Yeah. So right with that. So to me, if Sully doesn't think that they need to get heavier, I think that was a blatant message to the Berkey and Hexie saying, guys, you know what? We lost because of goaltending. My system works. Look at the way we had it in the regular season. We won the division, but you know what? Winning division means nothing. We said it last night. The system is the problem here with the Penguins. So do I say, okay, you have 1 year left with Gino, you have 1 year left with Chris. Hey, bring in a new coach, right? You have 1 year. So if it doesn't work with these guys with a new coach, then you don't re-sign them and you let them walk, right? Because as crazy as this sounds, Gino was probably the best forward on the Penguins last night, and he was playing with one leg. Last night we were all heated. We wanted this, we wanted that. But when you really look back here, even the last couple of games, Gino was the better forward, right? And so Nick says, yeah, you wish we would have ended up with Deloria. I said this to Jordan as well. There was a couple moves, but again, Penguin fans out there, they made one move, and they made one move only because this was JR's team. They didn't want to put their handprint on this team yet. They want to do it now. Now they're going to do what they have to be. If it's coaching, if it's player movement, it's their time now. Now, scary thing is that Madden and Yoey gave a 51 to 49% that Sullivan would be back. So when I heard that, I almost fell off my chair, because I'm like, this can happen. Listen, Sully's a good coach. As soon as if he gets released or fired, or if it's a mutual, ending to this, he will be signed to a team in a matter of a week, guaranteed 100%. Why wouldn't you if you're a team that needs a coach, right? Maybe his system works better with the guys that he's going to go coach with a different organization. But for me, Jordan, if they bring him back, man, this is going to be the same shit, right? Because Letang's going to be pinching. Is Sid again, last night was Sid's worst game in a Penguins uniform I've ever seen him play. And for me, that tells me that, so you're Sid, Jordan, right now, okay? I'm Mario. I come up to you and say, Sid, do Malkin Letang or Sully? What happens here?
Sully.
Right. So I think if it comes down to that decision, I think Sully's gone here.
And you heard a little caveat of why it may have to happen in the next few days, correct?
Right. Yeah. So again, the big talk, Madden, Yoey, Tim Benz, they're all talking about Rick Tocchet. And if you guys want to look back on our Instagram page, okay, when I didn't know what I was doing in the beginning and it was awful. There is a post that I have with Rick Tocchet saying when the Penguins were, came out of the gates and they were shit in the beginning of the year, I said, this is the guy that has to coach the Penguins. Now Madden and Yoey and Tim Benz all agree with that. The issue is, though, guys, is that it's a long weekend in the States this weekend, okay? I think it's Memorial Day.
It is.
I think it is, yeah. Long weekend in the States. Rick Tocchet is being looked at by the Rangers, the Kraken. He is a top candidate. And there's rumors, and I talked about this week on some of our podcasts, is that Tocchet, the Rangers look like Tocchet's not fit, right? So if things have to be done, they have to be done this weekend, meaning Sully has to be released, fired, mutual or whatever, departing. And then if they're going to go after Tocchet, that has to happen. Now, there's 4 keys to this happening here. Number one,
we got keys for Tocchet.
We got keys. We got keys. We got keys, man. Like, you know what? There's always keys to Tocchet. Keys to everything, okay? So the number one key, and this is not me making it up. This is what Josh Yoey said and Madden said. Number one is Crosby and Tocchet, great relationship. Crosby loves Tocchet. He was upset when he left, okay? Number 2 is that Hexy and Tocchet, they played together in Philly. They have a great relationship still, okay? Number 3 is, and this is a key
big
thing.
One.
This is the biggest one right now.
Where I think
Lemieux and Tocchet are buddies, and Lemieux loves Tocchet. Okay, and supposedly Lemieux was upset when Tocchet left. Okay, so this tells me here.
And can I just add this?
Yeah.
Even when you go back to when Jágr took the Flyers over us, remember Lemieux inserted himself in that situation and got on the horn with Jágr and tried to convince Jágr to come back. Like, he just didn't sit back and say, okay, guys, handle it, make sure it gets done. Yeah. So if he really and he has that adoration for Tocchet, this sounds like it could be a full court press that even involves Lemieux trying to sit down with Tocchet.
100%. So this might be,
and let me ask you this.
Yeah.
You gave me the option of Decor or Sully if I'm Crosby. You're Crosby right now. I come to you and I say Sully or Tocchet.
I'm saying Tocchet because, and this is where Sidney
and our power play was the most effective it's been in the last 7 years when it was under Rick Tocchet, no?
100%. Yep, for sure. And the biggest factor for me is Mario. If Mario sees this thing sideways and he does go to Sid, and this is a conversation, but this is a business as well. Like, everybody knows this, and like we talked about, the COVID has killed revenue here. So Mario's steaming right now, fuming because he didn't get another round. They need these playoff games, okay? Plus, capacity is going up. You're making money in different areas. You're making money on merchandise, concession stands. This was an opportunity to get some money back here, okay? So this is another reason why I think the core will stay. They have to sell tickets. The Penguins are an entertaining team. Look, they kicked ass in the regular season, okay? So to get bums in the seats, you're going to need entertaining hockey. That being said, the entertaining hockey has to change in terms of a different system. So Tocchet comes in, it's a different system. Now,
what's your 4th key?
My 4th key here, and this is a big one too, though, okay, is that if Sully puts the blindfold on these guys and agrees that he's going to change his ways.
That's what I'm worried about too.
Okay.
And then the season starts and it's the same old shit.
Right.
They end up firing him, but we've missed out on our opportunity.
Right. And not only that, we missed out on opportunity on maybe 2 or 3 good coaches. And there's a coaching change in November or whatever. I don't like when that stuff happens. Yes, it's worked well with Pittsburgh in the past, but we're past that now because, and talking about the core too, is that we have to realize as Penguin fans is that Sidney Crosby's not the player he was 3 or 4 years ago. I don't think he's a game changer anymore. He needs guys around him to be a game changer. Okay. And right now he doesn't have those guys. I've been talking about Rusty being on that third line, and we'll get to other things in regards to the roster. But with the coaching situation, I think it has to be rectified in the next 48 hours to 72 hours.
Okay, you put what Matt and Yohi said. Where do you put it at? You've been a coach, you've been a player.
Yeah.
You've been inside these rooms. I mean, you still have a lot of friends in high places. When you step back and look at it, what do you lean towards?
Well, I would be saying that I would have to let Sully go. And I think the way you got to handle this is the guy brought us 2 cups. He just brought us a division title with a number of injuries. He is a good coach. He's a very good coach, and I respect Mike Sullivan. I think I really enjoyed his time here in Pittsburgh. I learned a lot of the stuff that he talks about. I brought into my coaching technique, but at the end of the day, he hasn't had success when success has to happen. And now it's time to, and we talked about this. You're wasting Sid, right? You're wasting the guy, right? And really, when it comes down to it, Sully and JR, they've built this roster together with the system. The system doesn't work anymore. So I would say it's a mutual agreement. Sully, we're parting ways. You're not firing him. I think firing him is a little too harsh for a guy that got you 2 Stanley Cups. We're just going in a different direction.
Mutually, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Right. I think that's the best way to handle this.
Even though you really are firing his ass.
You are, but okay.
It's just the PR spin you're putting on.
Exactly. Yeah, that's what you're doing, right? So I would if I was a GM or owner, Sullivan would be gone this weekend. Yeah. Yeah.
Now, what do you put the percentage at of that actually happening? Because here's the thing.
Yeah.
Tocchet knows these guys.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Tocchet has personal relationships with some of the players, not just with management here.
Oh, yeah.
If we sit here and we see a 3 to 4 year window probably left with Sidney Crosby, Tocchet's got to see that as well. And Tocchet's got to say to himself, just like any logical person would, I've got a better chance of making noise over the next couple of years with Pittsburgh than I probably do with the Rangers.
See, that's where this worries me, though, as well, because look at it like this. So the Rangers are a young team. They have a bunch of number 1 draft picks. They have supposedly 2 young goalies that are still on the bubble if they're going to be a starting goalie. There's an opportunity there. There's a window there too to be a hero in New York, one of the biggest stages and limelights in any sport. And then when you look at the Pittsburgh Penguins, Jordan, there's questions if I'm going for the coaching interview, there's questions I have. We talked about this last night. Who's the goalie? Who's your number 1 goalie? What's your plan? Who are you moving? How are you want to get gritty? What's the plan? Who are you going after? Right. So I don't know.
You don't think they would all obviously ask him those questions too? Who would you want us to go after?
For sure they are.
Who would fit your system in terms of a goaltender?
Right. But right now, if you're looking on the outside of the Pittsburgh Penguins, you're saying there's got to be a problem here. Now, yes, it could be coaching, right? And I think it is. I think it's a system. Carolina just won in overtime. The series is over.
Beautiful.
Yeah, Slavin wins for Carolina. The one thing that, again, Pittsburgh, when you talked about the Penguins, when Marc-Andre Fleury was there, as well as Matt Murray, when you have a number 1 goalie, Jordan, and you're a coach and you're going to get hired for that team, there's that you're comfortable. You feel confident, right? When you're going after the Pittsburgh Penguins, like Berkey said and Hextey when they came over, they said, what an organization. But there's a question mark. Your leadership group has not come through the last 3 years. Okay. Your goaltending is a question mark. Well, you don't have goaltending and you don't have grit. Okay. So there's issues. So that's my big thing. Will Tocchet take a team that's up and coming, or will he take a team that has issues and take the challenge that he can make those issues better.
Yeah, because if you rectify those issues, you got a serious contender on your hands.
Right, for sure. So that's it's a twofold there, right? So we'll see. The first thing that has to happen is Sullivan has to be let go.
Do you see it being realistic in the next couple of days if they have to, given what we talked about yesterday about how the NHL doesn't really like things to happen?
Yeah,
that take away from the limelight a little bit.
I think it has to happen. Like I said,
or do you just say screw the NHL? Screw
I think the good thing about it too is that you have some series. You have the new series. The Islanders in Boston are starting Saturday night, so it's a long weekend. Actually, Madden pointed that out. He said it's a perfect time to pull the trigger because people will be doing. The states are fairly wide open with COVID, so people will be doing other things and really paying attention to the media. So maybe it's a good slide under the table. Mike Sullivan released by the Penguins.
All right, man. It's going to be interesting to see what goes down with that.
Yeah.
Now, another topic today that was brought up, potential trade candidates, now that we've come to the conclusion that it looks like the core might be staying.
Yeah.
And Nick keeps nailing the head on one of these guys. What are you hearing in terms of potential guys that could be moved out of here?
Yeah, so this was, it's funny because one of the hockey guys I know actually mentioned this to me last night, and he's still involved in the OHL, and he brought this to my attention last night. He said, "Don't be surprised if you see Jake Guentzel getting traded." And this was like a text that I got like late in the night after we did our podcast, and I'm like, "There's no way." And today, Madden talked about it. Yoey talked about it. So this would be the list. So if you want to really do a hockey trade, it's probably Jake's on his way out, or Brian Rust, or Kapanen. Those are the three. But if you want to get the best trade value here, it's probably Jake Guentzel. I know Nick made a comment here about he thinks that Berkey doesn't like Jake. I don't think it's not that he doesn't like him. I just don't think he's Berkey's type of player, and he's underperformed the last 3 years in the playoffs. And it was well pointed out today on Madden that every time he got hit, Jordan, he was looking for a call, right? So,
but are you going to trade him for grit and depth, or are you going to trade him for another skill player? And the reason why I asked that is, I don't know why he pops into my head, but could you see them moving him for a guy like Gaudreau if you could get a 1-for-1 out of Calgary?
No,
because didn't Burke draft Gaudreau?
No, Berkey didn't draft Gaudreau. No.
I thought
he was around. He was around as hockey operations when Gaudreau was really lighting it up. But you're going backwards because number one is you're getting a skilled player, but even smaller in stature and very similar type of traits in a player that when the game gets heavy, Gaudreau, and he didn't really have a good year. So, but what you'd be looking at in an interesting conversation today on Madden was that how about you trade Guentzel on a first-round draft pick for Gibson of Anaheim?
A gun name we've talked about here.
Right.
I don't see them giving a first-round pick with him, though, because they've stressed that they value that.
I get that, but the thing is, and like you always said, and Madden said, and I believe it too, you still have 8 good years of Gibson, like 8. That even though even the window when Sid gets 2-3 years from the road from now, you still have a number one goaltender.
So what do you do to fill that void
for Jake?
Yeah,
this is where you gotta, this is a couple other players. So Brian Rust was talked about. Okay, so do you do a hockey deal or do you unload his salary so you can go after more grit? Kapanen, they were talking that they believe Kapanen will not be here. Jason Zucker as well. And of the D, Josh Yohe was adamant that Marcus Pettersson won't be a Penguin next year.
Do you think Mike Matheson will?
Yep. Yeah, I think he will. So with looking at that salary, you're knocking off, If you get rid of, maybe Kapanen and Pettersson, you're knocking off about 7.5 to 8 million there, 8 million, right? And so now you're looking at, okay, Pettersson's out, POJ's in, and then they go after, that gritty top 6 forward to play with Sid, right?
So free agency or a trade, right?
Right. The interesting thing that was discussed today too about Sidney is that he was so hard on. And this is one of the reasons why. So Sully never throws his players under the bus. I respect him for that. But sometimes you sort of got to call out your players. It was said that Sid was adamant, Jordan, that Rusty and Getzel played with him. And that's why there wasn't any line changes to the top unit.
So does that worry about them potentially trading one of the two guys?
No, because I think now if management were to say, okay, Sid, we're going to be trading Jake for Gibson. We need a number one goalie. You know why we lost the series, right? Like, number one, his goaltending was garbage. We don't have a number one. We'll get you a guy on your wing. We'll get him through either free agency or another trade, but we need a goalie here, right? So, there was an interesting thing too, Jordan. If you watched the game, at some points, Sidney skated by Jari in the first period, and normally, and I'm a little anal on this stuff. I like to watch body language throughout the games.
Usually, you tap the pads when you go by.
Yes, exactly. And he never tapped at all. And this was during like the 2-2, 3-2. Right? That tells me that's.
And he used to do that for Murray, and he used to do that
every Fleury. Yes, exactly. And that told me there when I saw that, I'm like, this guy thinks this guy's a jabroni. He knows we're dead, right? So, I think Sid's going to be. I'll say this. I think if the management says to him, Gino and Chris will stay, but everybody else on this roster is tradable, I think Sid will agree to that. Very interesting. Yeah. Wow. So I think Sully's hands were tied. There was even conversations about why Russ was still on the number one power play with Carter having a hot stick. Why wasn't he inserted? Right. But again, Jordan, I think.
And when they actually had him on the number one power play because of the penalties or whatever in that situation, he produced.
Right. And listen, I honestly think, again, as much as I love Sid, I think there's a lot of bullshit that goes on with him in the back scenes with guys that he wants to play with, and him and Phil. Like when JR traded for Phil back in the day, Phil was supposed to be his winger, and he gave up on Phil in a bit. And I think this is why Kapanen you never saw Kapanen once with Sid. I think it was like for one shift or two shifts when they were healthy in the beginning of this year, and then that was it, right? So, Penguin fans, as much as Sid has done for the city, 3 cups or whatnot, there's a little bit of some background noise, I think, that goes on there, and I think sometimes Sully's hands are tied too.
Wow, that's a lot to unpack, man.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, are you pretty dug in? You think Gensel's going to be gone?
If they're going to make a real hockey trade, I think he's gone. Yeah. I think he had the opportunity to show Berkey that he could play in this series, and he didn't. So, yeah.
It's going to be
because you don't have anybody else except for, like, let's say your best asset besides Sid is Jake right now. Like, you're going to get more with Jake than either Letang and Gino too. Right? So, and you know what? Imagine Trevor Zegras and Jake Etzel together. 2 U.S. boys, right? On Anaheim. Right? And they got Sam Steele, they got Jamie Drysdale on the back end. They could be building a good team there, but
what
and
do
even
you get rid of him and you go out and sign a guy like Brandon Saad?
Yeah, Brandon Saad. Like I said, is there a play for Landeskog, depending on how the Avalanche do this year? It sounds like Washington wants to, blow a few things up there and there. Maybe a guy like TJ Oshie, you entertain. You look at a guy like, again, I'm going to say his name again. Somebody like, if somebody wants to come in, and this is just a thought here, a guy like Ryan Getzlaf comes in. You bring Carter, you have Carter, you have Getzlaf. Getzlaf's an animal. Like, they should have got him as well for this playoff run, because he would have ripped off, Mayfield's head. He's an animal. And he can produce still, and he can still do the things that he did 5 years ago. He's just not as fast, but he's still got his hands. You got to be creative and see what even a guy like, again, Kyle Palmieri is a UFA too, right? Yeah. We'll get into that later on in our podcast, but I think really you're going to see either Jake or Russ go. You'll see Pettersson go, and I honestly think you'll see Kapanen go too. I think you'll see. So if I'm telling the Penguin fans tonight who I think are going, I think you're going to see Jake gone. I think you're going to see Pettersson gone, and I think you're going to see Kapanen gone. Those are the three players I think will be gone.
Wow. Some big names, man.
Yeah.
Wow. All right. Anything else you wanted to talk about, get into here, Nick?
No, I just, again, I think it was very quick. We had our podcast last night. We're back at it, but I just, again, talking to Jordan today, I just wanted to update all the Penguin fans out there on all the rumblings and all the articles that are out there. As much as everybody's saying blow up the core, I don't think that's going to happen. And I do think that, if Sully's not let go by Monday, it's going to be interesting. Sully might come back. And then in terms of trades, we just talked about, I think, if you're a Jake Etzel fan, unfortunately, and I love Jake, man. And, my boy loves him too. He wears his number, my younger guy. Yeah, I think he might be on his way out.
All right. So, obviously, as things continue to develop, we'll probably be back sooner rather than later. We're obviously going to have to do a show where we look at potential players in free agency and through the trade market that this team could be targeting. I think that's a good one too, for to keep people updated of give them candidates of guys we could bring in to add that grit, to add that sandpaper, and through the top six all the way down to the blue line. And obviously we got to do a show here about looking at the expansion draft, guys we're going to protect and guys we're not going to protect, because that's going to be key too, because that's kind of a free way of shedding cap if you think about it, right?
For sure. They also said that
might be a way they get rid of Zucker's contract.
Zucker, and yeah, so interesting. We'll definitely have a podcast on that, because you're only allowed to protect, I believe, 7 players and 1 goalie, I think it is. So yeah.
And by the looks of it, we're protecting Maxime Legacy. So
yeah, Nick's pushing for Larmy to start next year, so who knows?
What do you got some final thoughts, brother?
No, man, like, again, I think like last night, it was down and out, but a lot of decisions have to be made, and I think I'm sort of excited and giddy to see what happens here, because I think this early exit has changed Mario's frame of mind, and I think it really, Hexy and Berkey, they thought, I think they were going to contend for a cup. They really did. And now they're like, okay, now it's my team, and now we're going to map this out the way we want to map it out. So I'm sort of excited, because it's almost like it's a new day. If things go down the way they should be, right?
Mm-hmm. All right, guys, we will be back again sooner rather than later, and we'll keep you guys updated with all the happenings, all the news, and all the rumblings going on in Pittsburgh Penguin land. And until next time, I hope everyone stays happy, healthy, safe, and blessed. Take it easy, puckheads.